Well, good afternoon, sir.
Hey man, is it
Ready
rainy
to
where
go?
you are?
Oh, it's been raining. I think it's over with. It's really windy, getting cold.
Yeah, it's
How
been
about
dropping
you?
all day.
Yeah, yeah. It's one of those things. It's wintertime. It's kind of the way it goes, right? Winter.
Absolutely.
Well, let's introduce this thing. What are we talking about today? We're talking about when to schedule a website review and or update and rebrand that thing.
Yep, it's
Hold
going to be a good
on.
conversation.
It's going to be fun. We'll be right back. So the first thing I want to do is I want to give a big shout out to Matt Dembrowski. He is the one that brought this to us. If you are listening or catching us on the recording, just know you can always email me, Taylor at sparkmarketer.com or Carter at sparkmarketer.com and give us topics that you would like us to discuss. So Matt emailed me and just said, "Hey, when should I do a website review? When should I look at this? Maybe do a refresh. Maybe what is it that I need to do? I need some guidance on websites." So we're going to talk about that today, and I can't think of anybody better than you, Carter,
Oh,
to talk about this.
well, I've done a few of them, that's for sure, over the
You
years.
sure have.
Both
So,
website designs as well as reviews and updates and
yeah.
refreshes, and yeah,
So, in your opinion, when should you do just a review of your website? Just review it.
yeah. I like the idea of doing it every 6 months. That's long enough that you're not obsessing over it. um, the more you look at your own website, the more tired you get of it, right? It's like the
Mhm.
new car that you buy. It sits out there in the driveway, and for the first few months, you love it. And then at some point, you just go out there and you just get in it and you go, and you don't even stand back and admire it like you did the first day you bought it. And then after a little while longer, you go out there and you see there's a little scratch on it and a ding over here, and the tires are a little worn down, and you've been frustrated with the gas mileage and everything, and you're like, I don't like this thing anymore. I'm ready for a new car. So I don't like obsessing over it, but 6 months, that's a pretty good time frame, quite
Mhm.
honestly. You're going to catch a lot of things every 6 months when you're looking at it that's important.
Well, that's great. Hey, Mark. Good afternoon, sir. Really glad to have you here. Thank you so much for giving us a like. We appreciate that as well. So let me ask you this: Do you look at when you look at the website? Do you look at it as just, yeah, I'm a little tired, it's a little old, we've lost somebody, we've gained somebody, we've maybe got a new logo. Sometimes people don't think that they need to make any changes on their site until there's something like really big that happens, like a big rebrand
Sure.
or something like that. And I'm going to take myself off the feed a minute. My doorbell just rang. Hey, this is how you know it's live, folks.
Yeah, so I one of the things that I recommend is anytime you make a change to your business, like if you seasonally change your hours for your showroom or something like that, then you want to update the website as soon as those hours change. There's nothing worse than misleading customers or consumers who want to do business with you, but don't feel they can trust you because they got in their car, drove 30 minutes to get to you, only to sit in the parking lot and realize that that business closed an hour ago. So that sort of thing is frustrating. And you want to stay on top of those kinds of changes. If you're no longer doing a service or you've just added a new service, it's a good time to just do an update, make a change. And while you're there, go ahead and review the website and all the pages and things to make sure that you're catching all the places where things are talked about, and making the changes throughout the website, not just in one place. It's funny, we all go to the homepage and we start there, and we may get one or two pages in, but we're not going to look at all the pages of a site. I know we tend to build websites that are pretty thick and have a lot of pages, and we do that for a reason. But to go through and review all those pages is important too, because oftentimes one of those deep pages is going to have a link back to a resource that is no longer there or no longer relevant, or you don't do that service anymore, that sort of thing. So it's important. And then of course rebrands, right? Whenever you've got a new logo, you've changed the look and feel of your business, you've updated some things to make it a little more current, a little more modern, a little more whatever it is that you want. That's going to be a time that you're going to want to take a look at doing that sort of a website refresh.
That's awesome. So did you cover, and I'm sorry about that, but did you cover the difference between a review versus a refresh versus a redesign?
Yeah. And honestly, anytime we do a review, it leads to a refresh or a redesign. So, but it's important to distinguish between them. You're right. So the review is just the process of going through and making sure that certain things are present where they need to be, right? Like, is everything accurate? Are you still in the same location? Is your address and your phone number correct? And all of these things, making sure that it's still loads the way that it needs to, and making sure that the pages aren't missing. And that's just a review. But at some point, you'll decide, it's time for either a refresh or a redo or a redesign. A refresh is just taking the existing site and making some material changes to give it a fresher feel and to update it, and it may look substantially different, but underneath the hood, it's pretty much the same pages, the same website. And then a redo or a total redesign is where you're really going in with, the jackhammer and busting things apart and laying new foundation and building from scratch a lot of times, and replacing the existing site with something new for strategic reasons. Maybe the old website was not performing well. Maybe it wasn't responsive and didn't look good on mobile. And it's time to break it down and build it new and do it, according to new current web standards. So that's typically that, or a big brand update is the reason that we would consider doing a redesign. But otherwise, a refresh is more often than not sufficient to really maximize the life of the website.
Okay. So guys, if you're liking this content, we'd love for you to give us some thumbs up, a little love on there. I know that Facebook likes that as well. So that's always great. Did you go through all the things that you need to review?
I've not. So that's the next thing we need to tackle, right? Like when you're going to do a review, what are you looking for?
What are you looking for? What are you looking at? I mean,
it's a pretty long list, and it's tough as an owner to be objective about your own website.
That's true.
It's like tough to be objective about when one of your kids does something that they shouldn't have done. It's hard to hear a principal call you up and tell you that your son isn't perfect, or whatever. You're just not going to see it the same way.
Right.
So it's sometimes good to just ask somebody else to do it for you, and give you that feedback. We do it all the time for clients as well as prospective clients, and just to give them an unbiased third-party, look at what we think of, what the site's life looks like, what its life expectancy is, or whether it, is performing well. So, okay, here's what you need to review. Number one is the content, right? The words on the page, the pictures, making sure that the pictures are still current, making sure that there aren't any stupid pictures on there, like, 5 guys on top of the roof, all doing, standing in a pyramid without any harnesses or helmets on. That's the sort of thing that'll get that'll cause your workers' comp to go through the roof. So, just cleaning up things that need to be cleaned up, adding new images. Those, looking for places where you think, oh, maybe I have some new images that would look better here than the one that's currently there. Or I have images for a place that doesn't have any images, and that would really help spiff up this page a little. So, looking at videos. Are the videos still on the page? Do they still load correctly? Do they play? Are they, you can get into more of the technical stuff around the videos too, where maybe a video is taking forever to load, and that's causing the page to load very slowly. And slow loading pages are very problematic in search now because Google pays attention to how fast the performance of a website is. And by performance, I mean, the simplest way to describe it is how quickly does the entire website become available to somebody to be able to scroll through and see everything that they're supposed to be seeing. And if it takes a while, then Google's looking at that and saying, you're not trying hard enough. You need to, I'm not going to show your site to as many people as you'd like, because we don't want to give a bad experience to the people that use our search engine and are looking for good sites. So testimonials, that's another one. Nothing's worse than going onto a website and seeing, I mean, I've done this just recently, was on a website, and the last review, the most current review on the entire website was like 2017. And, that's pretty old as far as reviews go. And it was a great review, but I don't know, since 2017, I mean, is the same manager there? Is the same employee still there? What's changed in the business? Are people still getting good experiences from this company? Because things can change over 4 years. So making sure you've got good reviews that are current reviews on your website, that's an important thing to look for too.
Yeah,
and the last thing, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just want to stop you for a minute, because one of the things I ran into just recently, looking at a website, they have one of those widgets on there that pulls reviews in from different places, and it was amazing. None of them were current. I was really struck by that on the widget. They were like, a year and a half ago, 12 months ago, 8 months ago, 5 months ago, 7 months ago. Nothing was current. And I sat there and watched it for a good 2 minutes as it scrolled through the reviews. No current reviews. I thought that was very, very telling. So be careful if you have one of those widgets. Make sure they're pulling current reviews.
The other thing to be careful with those third-party review widgets is they break all the time. And sometimes you'll go and you'll just see a big, empty box with, that says reviews, and there's nothing there. And that almost looks worse than not having the reviews on your website at all. So, be careful of those third-party reviews. They try to make it easy for you, but they're not always available when your site loads. And if that's the case, then it'll look like you're missing reviews completely on your site.
So do those types of widgets also slow your site down?
They can. Yeah, they can. It's a third-party resource that's loading from a different server. And depending on the way that it loads onto your page, it could prevent everything else from loading until it finishes loading. Like it may have a priority stack that it's trying to load first before anything else on your page loads. And yeah, that's a huge penalty thing as far as site speed.
Gotcha. I was curious about that while we were talking about it.
Yeah, and when I say third-party widgets, I'm including in that not just the review widgets, but video players as well. YouTube is really good. I mean, they have a really good infrastructure for serving up their things, but there's some other smaller companies out there. Wistia is one. We see Vimeo is another one. But Wistia is sometimes awful. And I mean, it can take 5 or 6 seconds sometimes just for the video player to finish loading onto the page. And that's a problem. And the way that they do it is a resource. It's a priority resource, and so it prevents other things from loading on the page. So you want to be careful with any copy and paste embed code or script or anything else that you're throwing onto your site. You want to be careful not to trust that some other company that gave you this free little widget is thinking of you and has got your back when it comes to your Google site performance score.
Gotcha. Interesting. So I know this last one is links, and a lot of people don't realize there's a few things about links that have to be done. I mean, when you're really reviewing a site, and we do these when we do our audits for our clients, but we literally go through and click every single link on the site and make sure it's going to the right page, make sure that it's still going to a page that exists. I can't tell you how many times that people will get rid of a page, but they don't do the work and go back and get rid of all the places that actually link to the page. And so you get what's called a 404 error. I think that's what it is.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. 404 is site not found or resource not found.
Yeah, resource not found. And so those are all the things that need to be done when you do those reviews. So
Yeah,
yeah.
and it's just important to say here, it is a lot of work to click all those links to make
Mhm.
sure that it's taking you to a page that you expect it to take you to, and that page displays the information that you expect it to display. But it's absolutely necessary. And at some point, you're going to be tempted to just look at that link and go, yeah, I'm sure it's fine. But I'm telling you, that's the same as, when it's time to check your oil, of just looking at the dipstick and saying, yeah, I've still got enough oil in there. Everything's fine.
Yeah. So do you I mean, just thinking about that, do you think that if your site, if you've not looked at your site maybe in a year, 18 months, that you've got broken links?
Yeah, it's entirely likely. I mean, links don't typically break out by themselves, but we do things that have unintended consequences all the time. We change the link to a different page, and we don't go back to make sure that all of the links that link to that page are changed as well. It could be that we're linking to a PDF or something that people can download, but we forgot that the PDF is no longer, we moved away. It's no longer hosted where it used to be. We put it somewhere else, or somebody moved it, and now it's just going to nothing. So it's just a good idea to click, to always make sure, because as you go through that, you're also getting when you get really good at it, you can wear all these hats at once, but it's really tough if you're not in the habit of doing a review. But you're not only looking at it through technical eyes, but you also need to look at it through the experiential eyes of your customer. How would your customer experience your website? And when they click this link, what does it do? And is that what a customer who's never been on your website before would expect that link to do? Like, would it take them somewhere that's confusing to them and they don't understand why it took them there? And maybe the information that you're wanting to show them is way at the bottom of a page, but the rest of the stuff that they have to see first doesn't relate to the link at all, or to the thing that they clicked in the context of why they clicked it. And, so you can make some good qualitative improvements as well, just by, clicking the links to see what happens when I click it. You'll also discover those performance issues too, like, oh, this page takes forever to load. Why?
Yeah. Yeah. So the other thing is really interesting because, I look at a lot of websites, and one of the things that a lot of people don't think about is clicking on those links that actually go off your website to another site. So, if you sell hearth, just an example, and you send them over to a manufacturer, sometimes those manufacturers, they've changed their websites, and so it just totally dead ends over there. And so those are other things you have to look, not just links, internal links, but also those links that are off page. I think that's good.
Yep.
So when do you think that you should either refresh or redo? What are the things that you see that would say time to make some changes?
Yeah, and some of this is just personal preference. We've talked a little bit about this already while you were answering the door, but the you're going to make a decision to do a refresh. Usually, there's like setting aside a whole bunch of like a big list of stuff that you want to refresh and doing it all at once. But if you're working with a company like us, and because we don't work with our clients, our full service clients, on an hourly basis, they can call and we can do small changes on an ongoing basis. So by doing that, there's never any huge refresh that has to happen. And over time, over the course of 2 years or so, the site that they have now is nothing like the one that we delivered 2 years ago, because we've been making those small incremental changes to reflect what's going on in the business. So that's a good idea. But there's web standards that change. I mean, this one hasn't changed in a long time, but with the advent of mobile first search optimization, where mobile sites really, and people looking at sites on phones more predominantly, it was very important to make sure that your phone number was at the top of the page. So if you don't have your phone number at the top of your page, both on the mobile and the desktop version of your site, then change that, make that. And if you need to save it up and do a big refresh, that's fine. But you can do it right now. I mean, you can just say this needs to happen because you're missing calls if it's not there. Just going through the list here. Testimonials. If your testimonials are getting stale, anything later or older than 6 months, absolutely time to throw the new ones on there. That's a good reason to think about doing a refresh. Updates to staff pictures, your team picture. If 5 of the people are gone or no longer there, and you've got 5 new people, but the old photo is still there. More than anything, your team just feels like, why are these old ex-employees still on the website? I'm a new guy, but I'm not on the site. So it's just important to make sure that you're keeping up with those kinds of things too. Performance issues. Sites over time get bloated. It's like when you're driving through the country and you see a house that was built in the 1850s, 1860s, or whatever, and the front of it is that old house, but then off to the side of it was something that was built around the turn of the century. And then hanging off the back of that is a garage that was built around 1940. And then, then they added a second story to the original structure that was done in the 60s or 70s. It's just this hodgepodge kind of a thing. Every once in a while, a good review is going to start helping you realize what sort of Frankenstein, you've got here, and how to, and that it's going to tell you, this is feeling like we're just bolting stuff on. There's no clear navigation. There's no clear understanding of why somebody is on this page or what we're trying to communicate on this page. We've just been adding stuff in different places. It's time to strip all that down and get down to brass tacks again and really spiff this up, from scratch, or do a really serious refresh.
Okay.
As well as just the subjective, like, I don't like this car anymore. I want a new model.
Yeah.
Well,
the other thing I think too, if you're on your phone and you go to your website and it takes a while to load, that tells you that your site's really too slow, because with mobile first, man, they look at that speed on websites. Yeah, absolutely. So I think the other thing is, if you just hate your website, I have some people that are just like, yeah, I loved it, but now I hate it. It sucks. I hope I can say that, but sorry. But I mean, I've had somebody recently going, please do something, because I just can't stand it anymore. It's like, okay.
So yeah. I'll just make a comment here because I just feel like we should, but it is, the entrepreneur's curse we are always thinking about the newest thing, about what we should be doing that's different than everybody else, right? Mm-hmm. We want to do it completely differently. And sometimes that actually becomes an enemy of our own. It gets in our own, we become our own worst enemy. It gets in our way. It's not in our best interest to always do the newest thing just because we're tired of something that works well. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. If it's still working well, you may be tired of how it looks, but just keep in mind that you look at it probably 4 or 5 times a week, and your average customer might only see it once a year. So to them, it's not an old site yet. And they appreciate the fact that they don't care. They care less about what it looks like. And they care more about the fact that when they come there, they can find exactly what they're looking for to either get the information they need or the contact, direction that they need for setting an appointment. So you have very different objectives in the way that you view your website than you do your average customer. The one audience member that you need to be most concerned about is not your customer so much as Google. You've got to keep in mind that your site is constantly being evaluated by Google. And in some ways, Google is your worst critic with regard to your website, its performance and the information that's there when things get stale. So keeping that in mind is part of the goal of deciding when it's time to do a refresh. If you're finding that your site is falling off of search results and is no longer performing as well as it should, there's probably reasons under the hood why that's happening. And that's usually a good time to get involved in a redo or a refresh.
Yeah, and that's interesting because I had this conversation just recently with somebody. I said, the everybody doesn't understand that your website has basically two customers that you want to attract. One is Google, and one is your consumer. The problem is if you do everything toward the consumer, it looks good. You got all the bells and whistles, but if you don't do the stuff that Google wants, Google's got to serve it up first. We got to get Google to like it first, so it serves up to the customer. So you've got to take both those things into consideration. Absolutely. Hey,
And
guys, we're getting to the end of this. So if you have additional questions, please make sure you put those in comments and we'll get to those as well. So we talked about the difference already between a refresh and a redo. So I kind of skipped around there, didn't I?
no, that's okay. It was the time to talk about it. Better than waiting to the end.
Yeah. So, one of the thing that I want to talk about too is to be aware of when you do a redo with a different company. And I don't say that in essence that you have to stay with the same company. That's what I'm saying. But there are a few things that need to happen if you go to another company. And so, Carter, would you cover that really quickly? Because I think it's really important to know what they are and the terminology so that you can communicate well.
Yeah, when you go with a new company, they're gonna most likely want to start from scratch. I know we do when a new client comes in. Rather than work with an old legacy website that someone else built, we'd rather start from scratch and build it the way that we like to build websites, in the way that we know we can support it, we can manage it, we can service it, and in a way that we know works right. So and performs well. So, you know, a new company is going to make changes. The problem with doing that is that oftentimes they're going to choose links that are different than the page links that you already had, and all of the Google strength that you've got for the existing pages of your site disappears because now there's all new pages and Google doesn't know what those pages are, and there's no strength going to those pages, and there's no understanding of the importance of those pages to your overall website. And so that's it's a horrible thing to see happen, but we've seen it happen where somebody was ranking really well in the search results. They went to a different marketing company, had the company rebuild all their site, but they didn't do the redirects from the old page links to the new page links so that Google understands what the new corresponding page is to what the old page was. And now they're tanking in search results. It's almost like they're a brand new company having to scramble up from the bottom of the heap again, and that can be really painful.
Yeah, and I've actually seen where a company went to a new company and went back to the old company and paid them. And what the old company did was they just went back to the original website, relaunched the website they built with all the strength in those, and I mean, and ranked them really, really quickly. And the thing that the original company bragged about doing this, but it's like, yeah, that was pretty easy because that's all you did is just redo that. Well, the new company, all they would have to do is the 301 redirects, and that'd have been fine. So that's one of the really main things that you really, really need to talk about that. So talk about customer data.
Yeah, if you've got a website that's dynamic and you're collecting forms from customers, contact forms, appointment request forms, things like that, you may have years worth of customer data sitting in the back of your website. And there's two things you need to know about that. Number one, if that's where you go to get that information, if you redesign your website, you may lose all of that without even realizing or thinking about the fact that that's going to go away. The other thing is that you, depending on the permissions that you got from your customers when you got their contact information from them on your website, you may not have permission to share that information with other third parties, which means that the new company that you're hiring to do your website doesn't have permission to see all that contact information. So you may need to pull it off of your old site before you get a new vendor in there to start doing stuff to it. So that's something else to think about. The last thing that we see happen all the time when they go to a new vendor is all of the third-party integration stuff. The vendor that maybe doesn't realize that there's a back-end thing that happens every time a form is submitted that puts it directly into your field management software for you, so you don't have to do the double entry, or it populates a spreadsheet, or it sends a text message to somebody in the office to make sure that they're aware of the fact that a form was just submitted. And so they build the new website and all of that goes away and your systems break and you don't understand why people are frustrated with you, because you weren't getting back to them, but the systems you depended on to know that you needed to get back to somebody were replaced with nothing, with a new site. So it's just very important to make sure that all of those connections and integrations and things are taken into account when you go to a new provider, so that they're aware of all of those things that need to be preserved or replaced with something new and better.
Well, I'm going to tell you, either we are really thorough or nobody has any questions. It's unbelievable. We've got no questions here. But seriously, if you've got questions, please put them in now. We'll be more than happy to look at those. Here's the other thing. If you're on the go and you can't sit in front of your computer on a Thursday afternoon, there's a few things that we have made arrangements. Number one is we have turned this into a podcast. Go to Spark Live. It can be found on Audible, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts, or where you get all your favorite podcasts, wherever you go. We are also doing a rerun on Wednesday evenings at 6 p.m. Central the following week. So this will be next week, next Wednesday. It'll run again at 6 p.m. So if you can't make it on this one, you can certainly do on the next one. And next week, we are going to have some fun. This is an anonymous request. How do I get out of Facebook jail? Did y'all know there was a Facebook jail? Well, we're going to talk about what Facebook jail is and how you can stay out of it next week. No questions? So we're out of here today. I hope you guys have a great rest of your week and a wonderful weekend. And we'll see you soon.